These sisters sidetracked me in all of this.
I hate asking you relevant questions, man.
No, it's okay. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. اللهم انفعنا بما علمتنا وعلمنا ما ينفعنا. اللهم زدنا علما إنك أنت العليم الحكيم. اللهم اجعل هذه المحاضرة حجة لنا لا حجة علينا يا رب العالمين. أما بعد. In continuation of our class through Zad al-Mustaqni', we were covering Salat al-Tatawwu', the recommended prayers, wa awqat al-nahi, and the times that we should not pray at. Before we get started, what was your question, Sheikh? You had a question about tafsir.
Yeah, it was about the tafsir of Ibn Abbas and how authentic was it, if it's attributed to him or not.
If the tafsir of Ibn Abbas is attributed to him,
Yeah.
Allah. You heard something to the contrary?
Yeah, I heard it's not.
You heard that the tafsir of Ibn Abbas is not
Written by him.
it was not reported by him? Who was it reported by?
I don't know that. I'm asking, I don't know.
I don't recall.
It wasn't his tafsir. He was like attributed to him, but it really wasn't his.
So whoever said that all right, so whoever said that it wasn't attributed to him, it has to be some dirasa, that has to be studied, right? So whoever said that the tafsir of Ibn Abbas is not the tafsir of Ibn Abbas, where did they get that from? I don't know of anything saying that it wasn't, but perhaps there is something. And if there is something, it should be available for anyone to find it and look it up, right? So whoever told you that, just ask them for that information, inshallah. Right. So last week, inshallah, the last thing we spoke about was the rak'atan ba'da al-isha, rak'atan qabla al-fajr, wa huma akiduha, wa man fatahu shay'un minha, sunnah lahu qada'u. The last thing we covered was making qada, or making up the missed sunnah prayers, correct? All right. Today, inshallah ta'ala, any questions about that? Not questions.
It wasn't about me. I just wanted to be sure it was correct. It was the Sunnah Rawati, the prayer that associated prayer, right? And that consists of 10 or 12.
Well, it's 10 or 12.
Yeah, it depends.
It's 10. It's a hadith that says 10. Is a hadith that says 12.
But you know,
a minimum of 10. Yeah. But the one about, which was the one we mentioned about the hadith for the house being built in Jannah? Was it for the 10 or was it for the 12? 12. Right. So, inshallah, we're going to start today, inshallah. Faslun fi fadl salat al-layl wa tatawwu' an-nahar. The first thing we're going to cover here is the chapter dealing with the virtue of praying in the night and the sunnah prayers during the day. Now, if you recall, when we talk about the sunnah prayers at night, how should we pray them? Sets of twos, right? Mathna. They should be prayed in sets of twos. Well, what about the prayers in the daytime? Are they similar? See if she wants something. Are they similar? Yes or no? Yes, they are similar. So this is what we're going to find out. Salatul Layl afdalu min Salatul Nahar. So the first thing, the author, Imam al-Hajjawi, he says, Salatul Layli afdalu min Salatul Nahar. The night prayer is better than the day prayer. But what is the night prayer? What time does that start? 6 o'clock? 8 o'clock?
Is it right after Isha or is it after? So I would always.
So in general, the night prayer would usually start right after Salatul Isha. Right? And then it says, so it says Salatul Layl afdalu min Salatul Nahar. So if we're praying at night, it's better than praying during the day. As we have in a hadith of the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam, he said, أفضل الصلاة بعد المكتوبة صلاة الليل. The Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam, he said that the best prayer after the maktuba are the obligatory prayers. The best prayer after the obligatory prayers, is salatul layl, is the night prayer. And this hadith was founded in Sahih Muslim. And then the author says, وَأَفْضَلُهَا ثُلُثَ اللَّيْلِ بَعْضَ نِصْفِهِ. And the best of the night prayer is what? What's the best part of the night prayer? Half of the night, the third of the night, the last third. Okay, what time is the last third? They made it right now today. What time is the last third? We're in Ramadan still, right? So we can still get some benefits, some reward. What time is the last third?
Like 3 to when Fajr comes in.
3 until when Fajr comes in?
2 to when Fajr comes in.
2. Are y'all guessing? Do you have some type of like?
No, I'm doing about a third because
some statistical analysis. Like, how you find this out?
My brain's going about dividing the night up. I ain't doing a real math, man.
So how do you divide? There's people listening. What do you mean? How do you divide? Like, what do you just?
From the time that Maghrib comes in to when Fajr comes in, you divide it.
Aha. So the time that Maghrib comes in up until the time of what?
Fajr.
Fajr. All right. How much time is that?
Like 8 9 hours, maybe. That. 8 1/2.
Say again.
8 1/2 hours.
So is it? What time does Fajr come in? 4:40. Right. 4:40. Right. And then what time does Maghrib come in? What time? Nah. What time is it? So let's say 8 o'clock, right? So from 8 o'clock and from the time of Fajr, how much time is that? Rather, the time of Maghrib up until the time of Fajr, how much time is between that? About 8 hours and 40 minutes. So if you divide that by 3, what time does the last third start?
2:30.
About
2:45.
About 2:45, right? So then, right now, at this time of the year, the last third will start around 2:30, 2:45, right? That makes sense? Right. So then, half of the night is when? Is it midnight?
12:20.
10.
Well, yeah, it could be around, depending on, it all really depends on how you divide the night up, right? So if you divide it up a certain way, then the half of the night can be at 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock, depending, right? Right. So then he says, أَفْضَلُ ثُلُثَ اللَّيْلِ بَعْضَ نِصْفِهِ. Why do you think, just from wisdom, why do you think that the best prayer is the night prayer? Why is that? Why do you think that is? What's the wisdom behind that? Yes.
The hardest time to get up.
The hardest time to get up. Good. What else? Dedication. What else? Why do you think?
Like you said, the struggle with your body.
Struggle. What else? Give me another reason.
Because a lot of sins in here is dua.
Because the sins in here is the dua for the people making dua the last third. Good. What else? I'm looking for one other thing. Because the chances of other people seeing you are less. It's more in seclusion. You can get up in the last third and nobody knows. So then by you getting up the last third, the chances of you showing off is less likely. Especially, nobody sees you.
The reason why I say that is people get on Facebook and say they up there for the 100.
People get on social media and say they'll put the 100. Nah, that's out of pocket. We shouldn't do that.
I know.
Because you can take something that you get reward for, you might lose it because you're telling everybody, hey everyone, I'm up for tahajjud right now. It's funny you say that because in Kitab al-Tawheed, there was an instance where one of the companions, I believe, he was bit by a scorpion, and they said he said he was up last night and he got bit by a scorpion, but he made sure to mention that he wasn't up praying. Why? Because he didn't want people to think that he was up doing acts of worship. Imagine if I'm up 2:30 in the morning, I was standing and I got bit. So oh, mashallah, he was up praying. But what he did was he said, and I wasn't up praying. And I wasn't up praying, right? The night prayer. Can we recite them silently or out loud? Is it khilaf or does it matter? Or
I've heard that. But I heard the narration where the Prophet Islam here, Umar and Abu Bakr, I think Umar was loud, Abu Bakr was low, and he told him
be in the middle. Right. So then, when we're reciting the night prayer, it can be jahran, it can be with a tone, a voice. But like I said, if you're praying like that, obviously you want to keep it down if you don't want to wake anyone up, and it's better. It could be aqrabu li taqwa. It could be closer for you to have taqwa if you recite it lower so that no one hears you. We come from a society where maybe we like to show off, right? So you want, you got to be careful. It says Salatul Layl wa Nahari Methna Methna. It says that Salatul Layl, the prayer in the night and the prayer in the daytime, is two rak'at after 2 rak'at. As the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam, he says in authentic hadith, or rather, we're going to back up real quick. So it says, Afdaluha Salatul Thuluth al-Layl ba'da nisfihi. The best salat is the third part, the last third of the night. And this is an authentic hadith. Afdalu salat Salatul Dawood. Kana yanamu nisf al-layl wa yakumu thulutha wa yanamu sudusa. All right. Dawood alayhi salam, he had the best type of salat. His salat would be Salatul Dawood. What is the Salatul Dawood? It was Kana yanamu nisf al-layl. He would sleep half of the night. Wa yakumu thulutha. He would stand for a third of the night. Wa yanamu sudusa. And then he would sleep the last 6 of the night. Does that make sense? So in essence, he broke the night down to how many parts? 6 parts, right? He would sleep half of it. So then you have how much left? Another half, another 3 parts. He would sleep, he would pray a third of it, of the whole 6, and they would rest the 6th of it, meaning to go back to sleep on it. So that would be the last part right before Salatul Fajr. So he would get up in the third, pray, go back to sleep, and then get up again for the Salat. They call this is considered the what? The Salatul Dawood. The Salatul Dawood alayhi salam. طيب. It says, وَيُسَنُّ قِيَامَ اللَّيْلِ وَافْتِتَاحُهُ بِرَكْعَتَيْنِ خَفِيفَتَيْنِ. That you start off by praying 2 rak'at, very short, very easy, right? وَوَقْتُهُ مِنْ مَغْرِبْ إِلَى طُلُوعِ الْفَجْرِ. And the layl or the night starts from Maghrib up until Salatul Fajr. طيب. It says, Salatul Layl وَالنَّهَارِ مَثْنَى مَثْنَى. As you mentioned, the night prayer and the day prayer is 2 rak'at at a time, due to the statement of the Prophet ﷺ, Salatul Layli wa Nahari Mathna Mathna. That the Salatul Layl, the night prayer, and the day prayer is 2 rak'at at a time. Right? Right. It says, وَإِن تَطَوَّعَ فِي النَّهَارِ بِأَرْبَعٍ بِشَهَادَتَيْنِ كَالظُّهْرِ بِلَا بَأْسٍ. So let's say, for example, if a person were to pray Sunnah prayers in the daytime and they pray 4 raka'at without doing 2 and then salam, 2 and then salam, is that permissible to pray 4 straight? Is the question clear? It's not permissible. Right. So according to the school of Imam Ahmed, it says that if a person in tatawwa fi nahar, if a person wanted to pray sunnah prayers in the daytime, be arba'in with 4 raka'at, be tashahudain, meaning they will pray 2, 1 tashahud, and then 2 more, and then tashahud al-akhir, meaning the last tashahud. In other words, it looks like salat al-dhuhr. Is that permissible? Yes or no? It says yes. It is permissible. It is permissible. And it says, لما روى أبو داود وابن ماجه أنه كان يصلي قبل الظهر 4 لا يفصل بينهما بالتسليم. And another narration, and this is, some of the scholars say this is da'if. Some of the scholars consider this to be authentic. There's a khilaf, a difference of opinion. But they said that the Prophet ﷺ, he prayed 4 raka'at before Salat al-Dhuhr in the daytime for sunnah prayers with 1 tashahud. With a tashahud in the middle and a tashahud at the end. Yani it kind of looked like Salat al-Dhuhr. It kind of looked like Salat al-Dhuhr. And then we have another narration. which says يقرأ في كل ركعة الفاتحة والسورة وإن زاد على 2 ليلا 4 نهارا ولو جاوز 8 بسلام واحد صح. So some of them say if you were to do 4 in the morning time or did 8 in the evening time with just 1 salam, then some will say that is even okay. So there's a big discrepancy here. However, it is a difference of opinion among the scholars of Islam as it relates to the salat, the sunnah prayers in the daytime and the sunnah prayers in the evening time. However, there's no difference of opinion with 2 raka'at, 2 raka'at, 2 raka'at. Tell you. It says what ajru, and this is something that I think is very important we need to discuss. The next is what ajru salat al-qa'idin ala nisfi ajru salat al-qa'id. The reward for praying sitting down is half of the reward for the one that is standing. لقوله صلى الله عليه وسلم من صلى قائما فهو أفضل ومن صلى قاعدا فله نصف أجر القائم. This hadith was reported Sahih Bukhari and Sahih Muslim, where the Prophet ﷺ, he said, whoever prays standing up is better than the one praying that is sitting down. And the one that is sitting down gets half of the reward for the one that is standing. So here's a quick question. Is it permissible to sit down when you're praying? Yes or no? Is it permissible to sit down while you are praying? Yes. For a sunnah prayer or for an obligatory prayer? Both. So, the brother says it's permissible to sit down for the obligatory prayer, and it's permissible to sit down for the voluntary prayer. Let him answer. Sorry? Like, is there any rules for that, or just anytime you feel like it, or how does that work?
Well, I know a pillar from the salat must be able to stand.
I said, so he said the first thing is a pillar from the salat is that we must be able to stand. Right? Right. So what about the one that's sitting down? Can a person pray sitting down? If he's unable to stand. The one that is sitting down praying, is his reward half of the one that is standing? Yes. Right. A lot of times in our community, we find people sitting down when they can stand. If a person sits when they can stand, so I'll give you a personal, something happened when we were in Mecca. One of our teachers, Sheikh Abdul Majid al-Subayl, Allah have preserved him. We were in his masjid one day. He was teaching us Umdat al-Fiqh, and we were going over this, and it was time for the salah, and there was a man, as we do on our masajid, people, they'll pull up a chair and they'll sit down and they'll pray while they're sitting. And so he asked the man, he said, well, why are you, when you came in here, we saw you come in here, you stood up. Why, when it's time for the salat, you want to sit down? He said, well, because his leg was hurting or what have you. So the Shaykh asked him, he said, well, can you stand? Do you have the ability to stand? He said, yeah, I can stand. He said, if a person sits when they have the ability to stand, their salat will be invalid. Their salat would be invalid. Let me say that again. If a person sits when they have the ability to stand, then their salat would be invalid. Why would it be invalid? But why would it be invalid? What would invalidate the salat? Because you left off a pillar. Because you left off one of the pillars of the salat. The only time you can leave that pillar off is if you have an udhr shar'i. You have an Islamic legislative excuse. All right? You might see a brother in the masjid. He'll come in the masjid. He'll walk in. He'll stand up, talk to a brother. They talk, whatever. Walk around. Hey, stand in the corner. Bust it, whatever. And then when it's time for the salat, bring the chair, sit down. You see how that's problematic? Huh? So, brothers, be careful when it comes to sitting. Now, if you can't stand, khalas. I mean, there's a exception in Islam for you to sit down if you can't. But if you can stand and talk to the brother, then why can't you stand and pray to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? And we're not saying maybe you can't bend, etc. That's fine. But if you can stand, then you must stand. If you can go into ruku', then you must go into ruku'. If you can go into sujood but don't want to because, for whatever reason, maybe you can, but you just don't feel like it or whatever. I don't understand. Some people have things where they can, but they think that they cannot do it. All of these things will invalidate your salah. All of those things have the ability to invalidate one's salah. Does that make sense? Like, go, you got a question. I know you do. Any questions about that? Yes.
I don't have a question, but you're actually commanded. I think it's in Surah Al-Baqarah.
Yes. You're commanded to stand in the prayer. If you're commanded to stand but you don't stand, then your salat can be invalidated. Your salat may be invalid. Nas'Allah salam wa afiyah. طيب. It says, Tusannu salatul duha. What is salatul duha? We started talking about that briefly before. Salatul duha. What is it? I'm sorry? When the sunrise? After the sunrise. Good. It says, Tusannu salatul duha wa aqalluha rak'atan wa aktharuha thaman. ووقتها من خروج الوقت النهي إلى قبيل الزوال. All right, we're going to stop with that. We're going to talk about Salatul Duha, and then we're going to stop with that, inshallah. It says, Salatul Duha. لقول أبي هريرة رضي الله تعالى عنه, he said, أوصاني خليلي رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم بثلاث صيام ثلاثة أيام من كل شهر ركعتي ضحى وأن أوتر قبل أن أنام. رواه أحمد ومسلم. وتصلي في بعض الأيام دون بعض إنه صلى الله عليه وسلم لم يكن يلازم عليه. All right, this is important. The Prophet ﷺ, he knew his companions, right? He knew his companions. So he advised Abu Hurairah radiallahu ta'ala anhu with three things. He advised Abu Hurairah with three things. He told him, do not leave these things off. So Abu Hurairah, he said to him, if my close friend advised me with three things. He said, fast 3 days in every month. What are 3 days that we should fast every month? What are they? Mondays and Thursdays. What else? The white days. What are the white days? What dates for those? 13th? 13th, 14th, and 15th. Why are they considered the white days? I'm sorry? When a moon is full, when it's a full moon, they're called the white days, right? So the Prophet ﷺ, he told Abu Hurairah to fast 3 days every month. So some will automatically assume that these 3 days are the white days, right? Right? But they also can mean, it can be any 3 days of the month, but some would say that those 3 days are the 3 white days. And then next he told Abu Huraira, he said, وَصَلِّ رَكْعَتَيْ ضُحَى. He said, pray the 2 rak'ahs for Salatul Duha. When is Salatul Duha? Salatul Duha is when we leave the waqt of prohibition. There's a time of prohibition after Salatul Fajr where we can't pray at all. And you have all the way up until the time of prohibition for Salatul Duha, meaning when the sun is at its pinnacle. We cannot pray at that time. How do we know the sun is at its pinnacle? At that point in time, there is no shadow. Anytime you stand under the sun around Salatul Dhuhr time or right before Salatul Dhuhr, you will not see a shadow to your right or your left. This is how you know that this is a waqt, the time that we should not pray in. A time that we should not pray in. Play it. The next thing he advised Abu Huraira, he says, when utira qabla an anam. He said, pray the witr prayer before you go to sleep. Pray the witr prayer before you go to sleep. وَتُصَلِّ فِي بَعْضِ الْأَيَّامِ دُونَ بَعْضٍ. He said that this salat was prayed sometimes and it wasn't prayed in other times. Meaning those different prayers. It says, لَمْ يَكُونْ, the Prophet ﷺ, they say he was not consistent with that all the time. And it says, وَأَقَلُّهَا رَكْعَتَيْنِ. The least amount to pray for Salatul Duha is 2 rak'at. It's 2 rak'at. The hadith Abi Huraira. وَأَكْثَرُهَا ثَمَانٍ. The most that we should pray for Salatul Duha is 8 rak'at. So, if you read through some of the history of some of the Salaf, some of the scholars of the past, you'll find that after Salat al-Fajr, some of them would pray from after Fajr all the way up until Dhuhr, continuously. Right. We have another narration that says, وَلَمَّا رَوَتْ هَانِي and the Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, Am al-Fath, the year that they conquered Mecca, صَلَّى ثَمَانِ رَكَعَاتٍ, that he prayed 8 rak'at for Salatul Duha. It says, وَوَقْتُهَا مِنْ خُرُوجِ وَقْتِ النَّهِي. The time for Salatul Duha, the time for Salatul Duha is when the irtifa' ash-shams, qadr al-rumh, is that when the sun is up. It says, what does that look like? When the sun is up and there's a distance of a span between the sun and the ground. So if you ever look at the sunrise and there's no space in between it, once it reaches a certain pinnacle, then you can pray. Then it is allowable to pray. But right, it says the next thing that is Sunnah, sujood al-tilawa. Sujood al-tilawa wa salatun wa yusanna lil-qari' wal-mustami' duna sami'. All right, this is the last part right here. We have something called sujood al-tilawa. Has anyone ever read the Quran, saw the Imam praying, and he just goes down into sujood? All right, this is called sujood al-tilawa, meaning there are certain places in the Quran that when the person is reciting that we should make sujood, right? Who should make sujood? The one that is reciting, the one that is listening to the reciter, but not necessarily the one that is hearing the reciter. Does that make sense? Listening, hearing, or hearing and listening. So what does that mean? Let's say, for example, the brother here, the 2 brothers is over here, and another brother is reading Quran to them. And other people are sitting in the masjid, they hear them, but they're not really paying attention, but they hear them. The brother is reciting Quran to them, and they come past the ayah of sujood, where they make prostration. So the 3 of them make prostration, and the rest of the people don't, because they weren't actively listening to them. They were passively listening to them, but not actively listening to them. Does that make sense? Right. So if you are actively listening to them, then you are also one that should make sujood, prostration. And if you are not, then you are not asked to do it. And this is a sunnah. It's not a requirement. It is a sunnah. It says, وَإِن لَمْ يَسْجُدَ الْقَارِئ لَمْ يَسْجُدْ. If the one that is reading it, if he does not or she does not make sujood, then you as the listener do not have to make sujood. Does that make sense? So let's say, for example, if we're praying in a salat and the imam comes across an ayah of prostration and he doesn't go in prostration, you as the one being led in the prayer, it's not for you to go into prostration. But we follow the imam. We follow the imam. Thank you. All right, it's the last part right here. I know I said that before, right? Thank you. It says, وَهُوَ أَرْبَعَةَ عَشَرَ سَجْدَةً. There are 14 places in the Quran that we make sajda. 14 places in the Quran. Does anyone know what those places are? I'm going to mention them. So you might want to write them down. The first one is in Surah Al-A'raf. Surah Al-A'raf. The second one, I'm just going to read the surah for you. You can find them on your own in your research. Surah Al-A'raf is the first one. The second one is Surah Al-Ra'd. The third one is Surah Al-Nahl. The fourth one is Surah Al-Isra. The fifth one is Surah Al-Maryam. The sixth one and seventh one is Surah Al-Hajj. Because Surah Al-Hajj, they have two places in Surah Al-Hajj. After that, the eighth one is Surah Al-Furqan. After that, the ninth one is Surah Al-Naml. The 10th one is Surah Al-Sajdah. The 11th one is Surah Al-Fussilat. 12th one, Surah Al-Najm. 13th, Surah Al-Inshiqaq. And the 14th is Surah Al-Alaq. Surah Al-Alaq. Right. And we also have something called Sujood al-Shukr. Does anyone know what that is? Sujood al-Shukr? Prostration out of thankfulness. What is the reason for Sujood al-Shukr? Huh? What is it? A dua being answered. What else? Huh? Here's another question. We'll get back to that. How do you make the sujood for prostration? What do you do? Huh? Right. So according to the school of Imam Ahmed, it says, وَأَرْبَعَةَ عَشَرَ سَجْدَةً فِي الْحَجِّ مِنْهَا إِثْنَتَانِ أو إِثْنَتَانِ وَيُكَبِّرُ إِلَى سَجْدَةٍ. So if you're going to go down into sujood, you say what? Allahu Akbar. You go down in sujood, you say Allahu Akbar. وَإِذَا رَفَعَ وَيَجْلِسُ وَيُسَلِّمُ وَلَا يَتَشَهَّدُ. So that means, if a person, it says, إِذَا أَرَادَ السُّجُودَ فَإِنَّهُ يُكَبِّرُ تَكْبِيرَتَيْنِ تَكْبِيرَتَيْ إِذَا سَجَدَ وَتَكْبِيرَةَ إِذَا رَفَعَ. So for example, if we want to make, let's say we come across an ayah in Surah Al-Hajj, we want to go into sujood, we say Allahu Akbar and go down. We say Allahu Akbar and go down, right? When we come up, we say what? Allahu Akbar, right? This is takbiratayn. The first takbir, we go down into sujood. The second takbir, we come up, right? It says, سواء كان الصلاة أو خارجها, whether we're in salah or outside of the salah. So that means if you're sitting in the masjid and you come across the ayah for sujood, you say Allahu Akbar, you go down in sujood. You say Allahu Akbar, you come up from sujood. And after that it says, وَيَجْلِسُ إِن لَمْ يَكُنْ فِي الصَّلَاةِ وَيُسَلِّمُ وُجُوبًا. If you're not in the salah, in according to this, if you're not in the salah, Because if you're in a salat, you go down into sujood, then the imam says Allahu Akbar, you can come right back up and continue the salat. Right? Did I lose anybody? Right. If you're sitting in the masjid and you're reading the Quran and you want to go into sujood and you come across an ayah for prostration, you say Allahu Akbar and you go down to sujood. And you say Allahu Akbar and you come up from sujood. And once you do that, yajlisu. Yajlisu wa yusallam. You sit up and you give the salams. And you give the salams. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. Hakadha, this is the way it's done according to the school of Imam Ahmed. La yatashahud ka salat al-janazah. Does that make sense? Right. There's a lot of detail as it relates to that. We're going to stop with that, inshallah, and we will continue next week. Next week will be our last class on this. We're trying to stretch it out. Any questions, inshallah? Yes.
14 places of prostration after
after Surah to Furqan, Surah to Najm, it was 3 after that. No, I'm sorry, you said Furqan. No, I'm sorry, it's more. Surah to Namal, Sajda, Fusilat, Najm, Inshiqaq, and Alaq. Surah to Alaq. Altogether, there are 14. There are 14 places in the Quran, or 14, probably 13 places. No. 13 surah in 14 places, right? Yeah. 13 surah in 14 places. Like, any other questions?
After class.
Can you ask me after class?
Day in detail, man.
What is it about?
One's about the sitting down doing the Sunnah prayers. Other one's about staying with Imam Ahmed praying Twitter. And the other one.
Ask them now, because.
All right. Well, as far as the Sunnah prayers, why is it that when you can sit down below and the pillar is lifted?
Well, he said, why is it permissible to sit down during the Sunnah prayers and to stand for the obligatory prayers? Well, we have in the Quran where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala commands us to stand for the salat as one of the pillars of the salat. Why part Allahu Alam? But we can say this, that we have narrations of the Prophet ﷺ praying Sunnah prayers while he was riding and while he was sitting down. And we don't have him narrated, it's not reported that he sat down and prayed obligatory prayers. So that could be a reason for that, and Allah knows best. As it relates to the Sunnah prayer sitting down, you can also pray your Sunnah prayers riding in a car. Some people, unfortunately, are of the opinion that you can pray in your car. A lot of women, when they're out and about in the streets, they'll pull over and they'll just pray in their car, an obligatory prayer. This is not correct. This is not correct. Rather, you should go somewhere to pray. The only time it becomes permissible or allowable, if you will, to pray in that condition is if you have nowhere to go, the salat's on its way out, and you fear for your safety or something like that. Those are the cases in which you can do that. However, outside of that, the same condition applies. The salat that's obligatory, you must stand in it. You must stand. That does not give you an exception if you don't have any fear, etc. The next question you asked was what?
I'll say that one later.
What was it?
It's about Imam Ahmed with the Twitter.
What about it?
Yeah, so why do you always want to be a fossil because they miss Twitter?
Yes. So Imam Ahmed, Imam Ahmed, rahimahullah ta'ala, he said that whoever does not pray salatul witr, lam yaqbal shahadatu, that he will not take their testimony. Imam Ahmed held it very important for one to pray the witr prayer. So what's your question about that?
Prophet Islam didn't pray all the time though. So why would
Right. So Imam Ahmed is not a what?
why?
He's not a what?
A prophet.
He's not just he's not a prophet, he's not a what? He's not a hujjah. He's not a proof in Islam. And this is important. I'm glad you mentioned that. We live in a society where people, a lot of times, we as a whole have not been properly educated. We'll come across a statement from one of the companions which is higher ranking than Imam Ahmed, who took a position. And that one statement, there's a statement in Usul al-Fiqh, Hal Kalam al-Sahaba Hujjah, yani, is a statement of a companion proof. Many scholars in Islam do not consider the statement of one companion to be a proof. So then how can the statement of any scholar that's not even a companion be considered a proof of Islam? Unfortunately, a lot of times we have not been educated properly to understand the statements of the companions, nor the statements of the righteous predecessors, meaning the scholars of the past. If a scholar of the past makes a statement like, if you see or innovator walking down the street, then you must cross the road, or you must do this, or you must do that. These are those particular scholars' positions. However, it doesn't make it binding on every Muslim to follow that particular position. Does that make sense? I think that's very important. I think a lot of times we as a group of people, we've been misled and misinformed when it comes to following statements of scholars of the past. The only statements of the scholars of the past that become obligatory for us to follow are the statements that have a ijma, that have a scholarly consensus on them, be it from the companions and be it from the scholars that came after them, which really, as many scholars claim, that there's no ijma after the Sahaba, there's no ijma after the Sahaba. So then in essence, the consensus of the companions, it stopped with the companions. And Allah knows best. You'll find many scholars say that the consensus, it actually stopped with the companions. It didn't go on after that. And I'm glad you did ask that question now, because it's important. People need to understand that. We have seen throughout the years, a brother or sister will come to you with a statement from one of the scholars of the past saying you can't do this or you can't do that, and then that becomes a rule in Islam. And in essence, it's not a rule in Islam. And in essence, it's not a rule in Islam. In fact, we have seen many brothers and sisters become divided in Islam because of one statement of one scholar. This is not from our religion. This is not from our religion. And we're going to stop with that, inshallah. Any other questions? Class. Yes. في شيء؟ طيب. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك وأتوب إليك. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. Why are we going to wait?